I think it is okay to feel that way, to not want to have children.
Yeah.
And to still have doubt, as you were saying, Kelty. And I think we are too quick sometimes to assign doubt as meaning something when we're all complicated people. And
nuance, right?
Yes, you can feel multiple things at the same time. Yeah. And that is why values are so important, because our values stay consistent when our emotions and feelings and thoughts change.
I'm Kelty McGuire, and you're listening to the Kids Are Childfree podcast.
Hello, Amanda. Welcome back. Nice to see you again.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me back, Kelty.
Most awkward intro ever. No, I was going to make a comment that like whenever I see you, you're looking summery, and like I actually had like another sweater on this wintry looking top, and I just feel like we're living in different worlds right now, which I
will say we are. I will say it's gotten like slightly chillier in Florida, which is nice. I'm wearing pants today. It's like 75.
Yeah, okay. I like, and I
65, 70. Yeah.
Yeah, I won't
cool
venture
fall weather here
to figure out the Fahrenheit, but I think it's probably about like 12 or 15 degrees Celsius. So it's not freezing, but it's like a crisp fall day, one would say.
Yeah.
And I tend to run cold. So here we go. I've got my like merino turtleneck on, which sounds like more heavy duty than it is, but I'm feeling like very like Christmas right now. And you have your like very cool, is it Dutch, your t-shirt, Blumenmacht?
I guess so. That's very funny that you know.
Well, so it looks very similar to German, but Blumen is spelt with a U with the 2 dots and umlaut over it. For people, you got to go watch the YouTube channel to check out Amanda's cool shirt. But
I mean, that's so funny. It's a flower shirt, and it says Flower Market. Oh, it says Amsterdam on it. I didn't even know. So there you go.
So clever. Okay, yeah, and it's got the windmill and everything, which I couldn't see. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, Amanda, fashion choices aside, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for another round of Dear Former Fence Sitter. And one of these questions, actually, funny enough, I'm getting my countries mixed up. I was going to say, I felt like she was somewhere in the Netherlands, but she's actually from a Nordic country. And I know that because it's in her signature, which you will, I love these like clever pen names people come up with. But I was going to say, one of these questions we got a few months ago saying, for your next Dear Former Fence Sitter, I'd love to put my question out. So I love it sort of becoming like a little bit of a thing. So saying that, people listening, if you have a question, just send it on over to me. You can DM me or find my email. It should be on the website. I won't say it here because I'm always scared I'm going to get like random spam. But yeah, we will have future conversations as long as Amanda so kindly will come and talk to me, which thus far she's been willing to.
Absolutely.
Okay, Amanda, let's do it. And for background on Amanda, I'll get Amanda to do just like a brief intro for anyone new, but highly suggest checking out her episode of the Kids Are Childfree podcast, which I feel like episode 26 or something. It was a long time ago.
A long time ago.
Yeah. This is going to be episode 80 something, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And it's been a while since we've had one of these. So, okay, what do we need to know about you? Just a little bit about your background for context.
Sure. So I have one child. I'm proudly one and done. I was on the fence for a very long time. And I feel like I still talk about this almost because I really was frustrated. I'm a therapist also. And I talk about this stuff because I felt like everyone I knew had kids, and then they would have like amnesia about ever questioning it. And I feel very like I still think about that. And I'm just a big, I just think in my work, I'm fascinated by the idea of ambivalence and how even when you have a child, or as you talk about too, Kelty, even if you choose not to have a child, you can still have different feelings and ambivalence that exists all at the same time.
Yeah. I think ambivalence, I don't know, maybe it's just not like a sexy topic for people, but it's something we discuss so seldom. And I also have to shout out your podcast, Nuance Needed, which you have with your colleague, therapist Sam. I'm like, that was a mouthful. Therapist Sam. What's Sam's last name?
Dalton.
Okay.
Yes.
And the two of you are fantastic because, I was chatting about this on another podcast the other day. Like, nuance doesn't really sell, right? As far as the messages we hear, the loudest voices, they're these sort of polar opposite extremes, which of course anyone listening knows this. We see this with motherhood is all this or all that, or it's wonderful, it's terrible. Same with child-free living. And yet ultimately our lives, like we live in the nuance. Life is nuance. And so Can you maybe just speak to like why you have this podcast or sort of the inspiration there for that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is what you said is I think as a therapist, I know so intimately how nothing is ever as it seems. And people are filled with contradictions and different feelings. And I think my other really firm, unpopular belief is that if you can challenge yourself to look at life in a more nuanced way, it is like one of the best predictors. And we actually have research that backs this up of your mental health being better, because when you look at things as all good, all bad, black and white, it makes your thinking and your view more extreme, and it makes bad things seem way worse and more catastrophic. And I am someone who did tend to, fall into, I think, more black and white thinking like a lot of us do. And my life got so much better when I started thinking about things in a more nuanced way. And I think the internet has made us a lot more black and white because of, algorithms and all the things that happen online. And yeah, Sam and I are just really passionate about helping people look at things differently. And a lot of our episodes, while we give like tips and ideas, of how to take care of your mental health, we also sometimes will just talk about things that we don't even have an answer to. And we like to model what like nuanced conversation and thinking looks like. And sometimes we're figuring out how we feel like in the moment as we're talking about different topics. We talk a lot about digital culture, mental health, and just trends we're seeing like online and therapy speak and things like that.
Yeah. No, I find it a really enjoyable listen. And I think this is a big frustration for people, what you said, which is things we don't have the answer to. And I feel like I must be a royal pain in my client's ass because, I mean, obviously people appreciate I can't know what's right for them, but at the same time, I feel like sometimes they want more clear-cut guidance. And this will come through today, I'm sure, when you and I are discussing this, is like, well, you could explore things this way or think of it that way, or what about this and what about that? But there's anyone who purports to have one definitive way of, attacking is a bit of an aggressive word, but we'll just say it, attacking this question or decision or any other area of your life, the kind of one size fits all solution, I would really be hesitant because that's just not how life is or how life works.
Yeah.
Okay.
And our brains don't like that. Our brains really like simple, clear-cut answers. But yeah, people are doing a disservice by not talking about the nuance.
Yeah. Yeah. Our brains don't like it. My brain doesn't like it either, folks. I empathize greatly. Okay, let's get into some questions. We've got 3 fabulous questions today from our listeners, and we're going to kick things off with one from Confused Atlanta Dog Mom. Let's see what she has to say. All right. Dear former fence sitter, I am 41 years old and will be 42 in February. I've never wanted children, but my husband always has. When we got serious, I told him about my decision, and he said he'd rather be with me without children versus without me with children. Over the last year, as my friends have had children, I've started to really question my decision. I think that raising a child does result in a more fulfilled and enriched life. Nevertheless, when I think about having a child, I think about the downsides, including lack of sleep, possible health implications. I have a history of health issues, falling behind at work, the cost and impact to retirement, spending weekends and nights doing child activities, including sports or other activities, less downtime. Recently, I was at my best friend's house who has a 1-year-old. The interaction between her and my dog was the most adorable thing I had ever seen. I've been seeking clarity through information gathering and prayer, and I've received none. We went to a fertility clinic for information gathering, and my husband cried after because I think he's still hopeful, yet the general stats we reviewed of people my age brought him sadness. I would say that the desire is not within me, yet I want to lead the most fulfilled life possible. Obviously, time is ticking, and I want to achieve clarity. Would love some support. Signed, Confused Atlanta Dog Mom. Gosh, it's like reading in class, Amanda. When I read all these questions, it's so nerve-wracking. I did okay. Okay. You first. Over to you. Initial thoughts?
I think this is such an interesting question. I think that I think my first, what I'm hearing that's so interesting is, right, she says that she wants to lead the most fulfilled life possible. She says the desire is not within me yet. I'm curious about, I think it is a good thing to be thinking about the life you want to live. When people talk about the most fulfilled life, I think what I think about is someone's values. And I'm very curious with this person, like what their values are over time compared to, right? She says, she kind of talks about this fulfilled life very hypothetically, not as I want this experience or, right, my values are to have family or my values are to, there just wasn't a lot of specific value identification.
Yeah.
And my one concern or question to this person is this a general idea you think? Because I think that is sort of a general conceptual idea in our culture is that if you want to have the most fulfilled life possible, you need to have a child. So I'm curious, since I don't hear a lot of her attached to that or her reasons or values why she feels that way. I wonder if that's truly what she believes or if that's what society tells her and what she thinks and other people say. Because I mean, you can speak about this more than me, but I think sometimes we talk about, or I talk about sometimes the difference between, I did an article on my Fence Sitter Substack about, right, type 1 versus type 2 fun and how parenting often is type 2 fun, which is really hard in the moment. And then you have rewards or glimmers later. And I think that there's a lot of ways to have type 2 fun in your life. If that's something you value, it doesn't only need to be that. So my question to her is, what else could a fulfilled life look like? Because there's a lot of different ways that you can be fulfilled and have a great life. And I always kind of fall back to like desire is the most important thing.
Yeah. I think that's such a good observation, just in terms of how she talks about this idea of like a rich or enriching life and fulfillment. And I would be also asking myself a similar question, and really, what does fulfillment look like and mean to me? And I know that can be hard to articulate and figure out, but a starting point might be, what experiences in my life to date have felt most fulfilling to me? Or I feel fulfilled when, or this experience has brought me fulfillment. And maybe looking for some sort of clues or connection points, because I agree with you. I mean, first of all, culture does say this is the most fulfilling, meaningful, all these other, and I don't want to say they're hyperbolic, because I believe that's truth for many people. And yet I think we need to be asking, like, for me, does this feel like it will be the most fulfilling life path? And I understand all of these, sort of quote shortcomings or downfalls about parenting that she mentions. I would be asking, what about parenting appeals to me? Or what about having a child or children is appealing to me, outside of the idea that it is fulfilling and enriching? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great way to phrase that, because I think that we can be very conceptual with how we think about things. And I think the more specific we can get, the better. I think probably her husband is also a component of this. And I do think like you are allowed to, right? Like one of the factors of my decision is that, like I don't have any nieces or nephews. I probably will now. My brother is engaged. But at the time I was making the decision, I really wanted to be able to have my parents being grandparents. And that was a part of my decision that wasn't even necessarily directly a reason for me. And it wasn't that they wanted it. It was really just I wanted that experience. So I think you are allowed to also factor that in of being like, I want the experience of seeing my husband as a father. And you're allowed to have that shape your experience. But that's different than I'm worried my husband will not be happy or fulfilled if we don't have children, or I'm worried about how our relationship will be, or things like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I have to, as a sidebar, say, like, I've often referenced you and how that has been one piece of your decision, right? With your parents. And for you having the desire to see them have that experience and having that connection between the two of you and between, you know, your families and everything like that. And I think you would agree, like, it wasn't the only reason as well. Like, I think it's also, okay, if our confused dog mom in Atlanta says, you know, I really would like that. I would love to see my husband be a father. I think that would be a beautiful thing. And I'll say for me personally, I think I would have really enjoyed that part of parenthood. I would also be curious, okay, in addition to that, just like in addition to this conceptual idea of fulfillment, what specific parts of this do I want? I think we do need to be looking like within ourselves as well, not just in the context of what it's giving other people.
Totally. And I think values are really like the crux of it, because values are what is going to get you through those really, really hard times, I think, of parenthood. It's like what you can stand in when things are up and down and you're questioning your decision. And I think most parents would tell you at some point or another, not that they regret having a child, but that they've been so overwhelmed and been nostalgic for their previous life, or felt like, oh my gosh, this is harder than I thought. Yeah,
no, I agree. There's another line in here that I'm curious what it brought up for you. And that was recently I was at my best friend's house who has a 1-year-old. The interaction between her and my dog was the most adorable thing I had ever seen. And then she goes into how she's basically been trying to get information around this decision, through, in my perception is like information gathering, prayer, fertility clinic. She talks about the husband, which I see as sort of, I don't want to say externals because I can appreciate for prayer for many people is also looking internally. But the piece with the dog and the baby, I'm just interested if you have thoughts on that. I don't know if it stood out to you, but for me, I was like, oh, okay, interesting.
I mean, I think it's similar to like, I don't know. It's because she didn't say anything else about it. I think there's also a myth that if you think things are the most adorable things you've ever seen, it is like a sign or means you need to have a child. And right, like I think a lot of things are some of the most adorable things I've ever seen. And I've never been like, I need to get, I don't know. I think like probably having
puppies, pig, or I don't know.
or like having puppies, right? I am sure getting a dog and like having puppies would be the most adorable thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But I have no interest in actually the job of raising puppies and multiple and like having them give birth in my house. So I think it's something that she can be curious about of if she wants the experience. But I think that is right. The adorableness, kids change, they get older. I'm very much a believer in you're signing up to be a parent. And I think the adorableness and cuteness evolution knew what it was doing, because those are some of the really hard times is when they're young. But yeah, I think that can be one factor of like, I'm so excited to see how my dog interacts with my child. But yeah, I think it needs to be in combination with other things.
Yeah. I something I kind of am fixed on. I don't know if we've talked about this in past episodes, but it's this idea of like ownership of beautiful moments, and the idea that when we experience a beautiful moment in the context of like a child or a baby, if it's not ours, i.e. it's not our child, that somehow it doesn't count. And I only noticed this, you're like, oh yeah.
I love that, Kelty.
Right? Because I feel like for me, and I've shared and sort of cited specific experiences I've had with other people's children that have been so beautiful and moving and brought tears to my eyes or joy in my heart or a sense of fulfillment or enrichment in my life. And what I used to do is immediately connect the dots to A, does that mean I should have the child? And B, it's like, well, but it's not my child. And my thinking is, but I'm having that moment. That moment belongs to me. Okay, I'm glad I'm seeing lots of nods. Again, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Okay, what do you think about this idea?
I'm obsessed with that, Kelty. I've never heard that concept before.
You can write about it on the Fence Sitters Substack, or you can cite me.
I will cite you.
Which I have to remind me at the end to tell the type 1, type 2 story after about this. So we got to talk about this on here.
Funny.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm obsessed with that. And I don't think that's something I would connect because I have a child. So I don't feel, and I think it's so interesting because I just love that. I think that's such a good point. I think in general, we, I think that the idea of having a child, not having a child, having how many even can feel very like, I don't want to allow myself to fully experience things in the moment because it means something about who I am, or it feels threatening to my identity. Even I feel this way sometimes, where if I see like really beautiful moments with, siblings and stuff like that, and I know I'm not going to, have that experience with my daughter, I think that I've gotten better at like appreciating it and just looking at it for what it is versus it feeling threatening and being like, well, I'm not having that, so I can't, watch this beautiful experience or whatever. But I love that. I think that's so important. I know you talk a lot about the importance or the value in your life of having children in your life, even if they're not your children, and how you help with your friends and you're involved. And I think, I don't know, whenever I talk about this stuff, I always think I think in the ideal world, we have people who want to be parents and people who don't, and we can all live in harmony, and like, what a great world it would be if we knew what our strengths were and what they weren't. And we could, this could lead me down a whole nother rabbit hole, I think, of just the hostility sometimes in America, specifically towards children, and how sometimes we cut ourselves off maybe from some of those enjoyable moments.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder, if we cut ourselves off because of the sense of, well, like, that doesn't belong to me, or maybe that threatens my own sense of identity if I don't have kids or can't have kids, or, I'm not sure if I'm having kids. And, I would encourage the person who's written this, like, if that was like a really beautiful, cute moment, the next time something like that happens, can you just be present and witness that and be like, feel the positive emotions in your body and the wistfulness, if there is any, right? Because I sometimes have these wistful moments where like I feel maybe a little bit teary, or I have this thought of like, I'm not going to have my own child. That's okay. Let it be there, but not allow it to like, again, connect the dots with, therefore I should have a child. Maybe you will have a child, but it doesn't have to do with that particular experience, or it doesn't necessarily have to. And then maybe think about how we can cultivate more of those kinds of experiences. So if you're like, oh my God, that's cool, the next time you see your best friend and her one-year-old, like, bring the dog alongside. Yeah. Like, can the four of you go and watch the dog and the baby play in the leaves together this fall? Yeah. Like, can it be a special kind of friendship or bond that you cultivate where it's like, I have to make sure that I bring my dog, or we like bring them together. It's like, I know it's not a human child, but there's nothing to say that you can't have a really cool, interesting relationship that way with your friend and their child and your fur child. So
totally agree. I love that.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. Well, we wish you luck, Dog Mom in Atlanta. And I think to summarize, like, trying to go within, really articulating what your own values are and what it is you want for your life versus what is being pushed upon you, which may be the same thing, but that might hopefully shed some light on things. All right. Let us go with this question here, which is, dear former fence sitter, my husband and I are essentially child-free by choice. And recently we were supposed to go out with some close friends, but they couldn't find a sitter and asked if we wanted to come over instead. We agreed. And when they asked if they want to come, and they asked us if we want to come before the kids go to bed, 2 under 2, namely they have 2 kids under 2, I'm assuming, I politely said I'd prefer afterwards so we can have you to ourselves. To be honest with you, I'm child-free and I don't enjoy the company of other kids. Spending time with our kids is so exhausting and not enjoyable for me to the point where it's mentally draining and I leave feeling like I need to take a nap. My body just needs to shut down after being around young kids. It feels super polarizing, as many people say that they have the pull of having kids after being around them, but it's quite the opposite for me. Being around kids is pretty much birth control for me. And I leave thinking, thank goodness that's not my life. Part of me is like, well, okay, there's my answer. But the other part of me is like, well, am I going to feel this way if I have my own kid? And what if I don't? But also, what if I do? Haha. Anyways, it feels super isolating because those who are child-free still have a presence in other kids' lives. And I don't feel the need to be a presence in my friends' kids' lives. And on the other hand, a small part of me wonders if I'd feel differently about my own kids. Maybe despite not liking kids, if I had my own, I'd love them and it would be fine. Am I alone in feeling this way? And should I consider having kids despite these strong feelings about not wanting to be a part of the lives of kids that are in my life? Signed, Clearly Confused. I wasn't looking at the screen when I was reading it because I had the other one up, but I could hear you kind of like maybe let out a little chuckle. So
This is so fascinating.
Do you relate?
I do relate. I relate
thought
a
you
lot
might
to
a degree.
this.
I was like, this is the perfect letter for Amanda. Okay.
Yes, I felt that way around kids. So I definitely relate. I think that, I often didn't really want to be around my friends' kids. It did change a little bit when one of my friends had a really cute baby that was pretty chill. And I was like, oh, I get this a little bit more. Yeah. But in general, yes, that's how I felt. Okay, this is the thing, is if you have children, your brain does change. It's scary to think about, but that is one thing that happens where your brain does change through a process called matrescence. And you will think that your kids are cuter and more amazing than other people's kids. That's just evolution. And it's also spending time with them. I mean, we all think our dogs are the cutest dogs compared to any other dogs in the world because you have all of these small, specific moments with them that like paint this rich picture. So I don't think either, right? You're not alone in this, I want to say. I don't think it means one thing or another necessarily. I think that is a small piece of information compared to someone who's like, I love being around kids. I cannot wait to have my own kids. But I also think kids are young for a short period of time. And then they do get older. And how I and my husband made our decision is we wanted to be parents. And I think thinking about that rather than do I love kids? Do I like kids? Do I want to be around them? Is, the years of 0 to 3 years old going to be so fun and intense. I think a lot of people find the toddler years, the baby years, extremely draining, extremely intense. I feel that way, and I only have one. And my daughter is 2.5, and we are starting to flirt with the idea of she's getting a little bit more independent, which is dramatically changing our life. But yeah, I mean, like on Saturday, if I'm being super honest, like it was one of the most draining days ever. She was upset. Everything made her mad. I think getting overstimulated and your own tolerance for that has a really big impact. But I also believe we all can shine in different areas. And at least for me, I'm going to shine probably as like a teenage mom and even younger because I can talk, like I've worked with teens, I can talk to them. I'm pretty good with that stuff. So my whole reason or my whole kind of theory, and then I'm interested in your thoughts, Kelty, is that I don't think it means you shouldn't have kids, but I don't think it means you should have them either. Like, I think that is, if you chose to have kids, I do think you're going to be really exhausted. I think it'll be easier because you're going to have a much deeper love for them. And I think one thing I didn't know or understand about having kids until I had them was, I don't know, toddlers and young kids are like so unpredictable that you have to spend a lot of time around them to get some of these like incredible nuggets of joy and cuteness and love. Like, how do I explain this? I was trying to think of a way I want to write an article about it. Like I think having kids is such an incredible metaphor of how you like can't pick and choose different parts of your life that you want and you don't want. Yeah. Like you can't optimize it. Obviously you can get help and get support, but a lot of the like most beautiful moments of parenting for me also happen during things where I would have I would be like, I don't want to do that. That's not enjoyable because they're so unpredictable. Like, it'll be like they're exhausted and you're like they're taking a bath and you just want the bath to be over, and then they like, pause for a second and look at you and say like, I love you, right? Or they'll do the funniest, silliest, most ridiculous thing. When, nothing is happening that's interesting. So I don't doubt that those moments wouldn't happen to that person, but I also think a lot of it will be very exhausting, and those things can both exist too. But it's not necessarily, that's why my summary is I wouldn't take it as you should have a child or you shouldn't.
Okay, if you have been spending the last several months or maybe years making pros and cons lists, trying to figure out whether you want to have kids or stay child-free, I'm going to encourage you to stop right there and to do something different instead. And that is to check out one of our upcoming kids or child-free online workshops. These are 2-hour online workshops hosted in the company of like-minded women, where I'm going to give you some of the actual tools and resources that I personally use to help make my kids or child-free decision. You're going to walk away from this workshop with a workbook that you can go through on your own time. And I can tell you that these 2 hours together are going to give you so much more clarity and direction in terms of the right choice for you. Find all the details on an upcoming kids or child-free workshop over at kidsorchildfree.com or in the show notes of this episode.
I think we want each and every experience we have to be information in this decision. And sometimes they're just life experiences, like whether they involve kids or not, they may not have anything to do with this. And I think it's good to be reflective. I love that our dear letter writer is asking us, this question. I'm like, well, what does this mean? I think a lot of the advice that we gave in question 1 could actually apply here. Like, so outside of the frustrations and the fact this feels annoying and heavy in your brain, like what about having a child intrigues you?
Mm-hmm.
I do, and I'm just seeing here, I'd be curious. I think it's fine to change your mind, right? So I can see how sometimes if we feel really strongly a certain way, and then we start having this little sense of, oh, maybe this is something what I want, or maybe there's a shift there in terms of how you see yourself. There is that possibility of, I could see myself as a parent, which, by the way, I really like that framing, that question, not just do I want to have a kid or kids, but do I want to be a parent and have this experience? I think it's okay to have an openness to that. And I want to say age shouldn't have anything to do with this, but I would also be curious, are you at the beginning phase? Because I feel like, I can't remember if it was actually this letter or the other one, but talking about, I think it might've been the other one about talking about people starting to have kids. But if you're, let's say 41 or 42, like our previous letter writer, and you're like, oh my God, should I have kids? If everything in your life up to this point has really been nope, not for me, don't really like this, it may be sort of you had a great analogy in our last Dear Former Fence Sitter episode where you talked about the pull of society's current, if there maybe is this feeling for the person where it's oh no, am I really making the right choice? It's kind of the, there's another term for it. It's, oh God, what do they call it? It's
are you talking about the extinction burst?
Exactly. It's maybe it's the extinction burst, right? The last hurrah of this part of yourself, and maybe even in a small way wanted a child. And so I think it's great to honor and listen to that. And listening to this letter is basically it feels a little bit confusing to me as far as don't really, it's just pretty much down on kids and having kids. And yet this question of, but should I have kids? I'm not to say, I know it can be complicated. And to your point, it can be very exhausting, and it can be a lot, and it can be trying, and it will be different with your own kids. But I guess I'm just curious if the person could maybe explore a little bit more that seed of doubt part of themselves. What's that about? What's underneath of that? What's going on? When did these feelings start, or have they always been there? If there could maybe be a connection to some other things that have been going on. The other thing I want to say is I feel in a way, this letter is a little bit of a permit, request for permission. Mm-hmm. If you're, let's say it's the weekend, it's Friday or Saturday night, you're planning to see your friends, most people, the parents included, probably just want to kick back, relax, enjoy some good food and drinks, some adult conversation. I think it's totally reasonable. And you said you framed it in a very polite way, hey, we'd love to just spend time with you. And I also am the kind of person sometimes I want to see my friends' kids. Other times I'm let's just see you after, because we know it's hectic at bedtime and I don't want to be one more thing that's in your way. Or so I think it's okay to feel that way and to want adult time. And, you're not, there's nothing wrong with you for feeling that way. And again, I think a lot of parents would probably feel similarly. I would also be just really looking at okay, what else is going on around this? And P.S., the last thing to say, because there was a comment made about, I know most child-free people have a presence of other kids in their life. And I really appreciate Amanda saying that I've put an effort in and have kids in my life. Mm-hmm. Some kids to a limited degree some of the time. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say I'm the superhero auntie. I mean, I have a niece and a nephew who live in a different country. So of course, when I'm there, it's I'm all in. But most of the year, we don't have that many children nearby in our life. And I'm not really the hero showing up maybe in the same way that my husband is. I'm kind of cool, we can have some dialogue and then like pass the wine, right? And
Yeah.
that's okay too. So and I also want to say, I know there are child-free people out there who actually really strictly do not love kids that much, which, you know, maybe is a conversation for a different day, what we think about that. I you know, great, fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, but it's also okay not to like that. And don't feel like every child-free person has to still love kids and being around them. I don't think so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like, I mean, and the person was pretty clear. I forgot this at the beginning, right? Like you guys are child-free by choice. Yeah. Being around kids is like birth control. Like, I think it is okay to feel that way, to not want to have children. Yeah. And to still have doubt, as you were saying, Kelty. And I think we are too quick sometimes to assign doubt as meaning something when we're all complicated people and
nuance, right?
Yes, you can feel multiple things at the same time. Yeah. And that is why values are so important, because our values stay consistent when our emotions and feelings and thoughts change.
Yeah, well said. All right, we have one final letter here. Let us see. All right. This is from our Nordic fence sitter, which is not the same thing as the Netherlands. Just another area with an N in Europe. Don't mind me. But I had to remember it when we were talking about your t-shirt. Okay. This is how my mind works, Amanda. Connecting the dots where there are none. All right. Dear former fence sitter, up until this point, I, female 29, have felt pretty sure that I don't want children. Mainly because I've never daydreamed about babies or the busy family life, and I never imagined myself pregnant. I have many hobbies and passions, and my life feels rich and wonderful as it is. At the same time, I've always valued the family I had growing up, and both me and my boyfriend like to spend time with our parents, in-laws, and siblings. I can't imagine one day not having living family. I've tried to get off the fence for a while, and a part of that effort has been active rest, trying to remove overwhelm. As I feel more rested, I do sometimes get a glimpse of, perhaps I want this. When I meditate and I'm in touch with my inner self, the image of a child comes up sometimes. For example, I'll suddenly get a vibrant image of a toddler with me in front of a campfire, making me feel such a sense of love and belonging. My fear is that I have internalized the society's expectations for me to want to have a child, and that these positive feelings towards having a child is a result of that. How can I recognize my true feelings and separate them from internalized ideas? It seems impossible when it feels like it comes from within. Thank you so much, Nordic fence sitter.
Trying to think of where I want to start this. Well, I think just as one small aspect to tackle, she says, like, I can't imagine one day not having living family. I think even if you don't have children, you'll have, it sounds like you have siblings. Unless there's an apocalypse, like I think, there will probably be other living people in your life. If your siblings have kids, you will have nieces and nephews. I think just because you don't have, even if something happened, I think that we also can have really incredible friends and other people in our life. So that's one thing that I wanted to say. I mean, I think her crux of it is this whole thought of, right, that she gets a glimpse of perhaps she wants this, but she's afraid that, I think she's saying she wonders if this thought of having a child is actually internalized expectations that she should have a child. And I think, though, at least the way she described it, it sounds very pure. It sounds very like this idea of a toddler is interesting. And I actually very much relate to what she's saying, because I did have this fear a bit. And a lot of my desire did kind of come from these random pure moments. And it's why I talk a lot on Fence Sitter about how it wasn't logical, my desire to have a child. In a lot of ways, it was sort of like, I just want this thing, I just want this experience, or the idea of a toddler or a child would kind of come into my mind of what it would look like and feel like. So I understand her concern, but those are, I have more thoughts, but I'm interested in yours, Kelty.
I'm like, I want to hear your more thoughts, but okay, I'll share, twist my arm. I'll share a couple of things. Something that I just, as a bit of a sidebar, that I really appreciate that Nordic Fence Sitter has shared is the piece about taking rest. And I think she calls it active rest, which is always like, this is no shade to Nordic Fence Sitter, but it's always an expression that it's like, even when we rest, it has to be like active rest.
Yes.
Like we've got to be intentional about it. Which, we do have to be intentional about it. I appreciate this idea of like slowing down and trying to eliminate overwhelm. And, I've had quite a few people say to me recently, for example, oh, I've been sick, or I went through a busy time at work, or this family drama was unfolding. And their main thought was, how could I ever do this with children? And it's like virtually anyone out there, no matter how much they desire having a child or children, if they have them, like nobody can think about taking on what is arguably going to be a challenging thing to do, no matter what rewards it brings, when they're feeling unwell, when they're going through a lot. And yes, in life, sometimes we will be unwell, and sometimes we will think, how the hell am I going to cope? And I think that's also very normal. And so I'm not saying everything needs to be like, baby lambs and butterflies or whatever, like to make this choice. But I also want to say, I really appreciate taking this decision from a place of relative calm. And that's something I try and encourage my clients to do. It's like, the more we are spinning out and putting pressure on ourselves to make this decision, I get it. I understand why we're in that state. But if we can just take things down a notch, even if it's something as simple as taking a few breaths before, let's say, we sit down to journal or talk to our therapist or whatever it may be, or creating that space to do that, I think can be really helpful. So I want to give a kudos there and say it's a nice, refreshing thing to hear. This worry that these beautiful images she's getting and these thoughts are, maybe the pull is society's expectations. I mean, I would reflect on, what do society's expectations feel like to you, or expectations from anyone, because I'm sure we've all felt certain expectations to go to our in-laws for Thanksgiving, expectations to look a certain way. And I agree that those things can be insidious. And I think that we can't ever expect to fully extract ourselves from that. And it's okay, right? Like, we are social creatures who, it's okay to have some influence. But I would notice, like you say, the word pure, I think it suits as far as I can tell. I would be curious as far as, how does that feel for you when you're experiencing that? What are the emotions connected to that? Does that feel like expectation? Does that feel like pressure? Does that feel like a should? Or is it like something else? I also might be curious to maybe do a little bit of, if you like meditation and visioning, of like similarly exploring what images might come up with a child-free life as well. Yeah. Because I know no one likes hearing this, but this very well could be a matter, like it is, I think, for most people, of like, there's not necessarily a right answer here. It's like, choose your own adventure book. I kind of like, is my analogy of like, which of these two paths do you feel drawn to? But again, I mean, I just want to say, like, I appreciate the openness here. We talk about things shifting. I love hearing that you have a rich and wonderful life, and there's a lot of passions. And it's also okay that you say you never daydreamed about babies, you never imagined yourself pregnant. That's society expectation. When we think about, well, you should have those visions if you're a true good mom. If you're really maternal, you'll have thought about this from the age of 2. Okay, that's for the most part society putting a baby doll in your arms and you saying, oh, I always knew I wanted this. So I guess I just want to say, like, great for exploring it. And just because you maybe haven't questioned or thought about it a huge amount until now, 29, really, like, and this is not meant to be dismissive, but like, not that old. I think it's super fine and appropriate to be asking these questions. I would encourage you to just consider being a little bit playful and curious and exploring. So back to you. Tell us the rest of your thoughts, Amanda.
No, I love that. I agree. I think that all your points, Kelty, are incredible. I don't have a ton else to add, except that I think she mentioned she values family. I think she talks about, as she's been resting, she sometimes gets a glimpse of perhaps I want this. I think that there is this idea that we should know, and it should be this very clear answer. And like we constantly talk about, there can be more than one beautiful way to live your life. And I think that it is okay to explore whether you want this and choose not to. It's okay to explore whether you want this and then choose to have a child. But I would really lean into what you said, Kelty, about What does overwhelm and pressure feel like
Mm-hmm.
in your life right now? Is that what pops up when you meditate? But I think this obsession sort of with like our true feelings does sometimes lead me to believe that there may be this idea that this person feels like there is one right answer for them. And we need to just like go on this archaeological dig to find what our true path is. And I think that life is more complicated than that. And you can, have a true feeling of that having a child is interesting. And you can have a true feeling that like having a child-free life that is rich and meaningful is also interesting. And that doesn't mean one is your truth and one is not necessarily.
Yeah. I think this idea of there being a one truth that lives out there, so to speak, is one that I know so many fence sitters subscribe to. And I certainly see, I think, threads of that and at least one of the two other questions we've tackled today, but probably to an extent in all of them. And so I think that's the first thing we need to be asking ourselves is like, do we think there's one true answer within us or out there that we need to find? And you might say, yeah, I think there is, and I've got to uncover it. Okay, great. I also, would explore like, what if it's more something you create for yourself? What if you make that one truth, like that there isn't, but like you live it out that way? And I feel like this quote pops up everywhere, and it's probably been cited on this podcast, but I'll share it again. I'm sure you've seen the clip with Dr. Ellen Langer, I think is her name. And she says, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially we're so fixated on finding the right answer and making the right decision. She said, really what we need to do is make a decision and then make it right. And I love this idea of us, I'm not saying haphazardly picking a path, but at a certain point we need to choose and then making it right for us, making it a fit, living it out, like correcting course, going through all of the fire, if we will, and making it right for us. It's neither of these paths, kids or child free, is definitively perfectly defined one way. We get to decide how to make it right for ourselves, I think.
And I think there's something to be said for when you make a decision and then you have to make it right, there is like an inherent vulnerability in that.
And responsibility.
And I think in our current society of, I don't know, we don't have to commit to things sometimes, I think, because there's like a lack of friction of it's very easy to not rely on people to, we are more isolated. We're sometimes like, more removed from our communities and things like that. I think that, and we're in this like age of information overwhelm where you can research to death what the right decision is. Sometimes it can be a way for us to procrastinate and drag our feet a bit. And then we don't have to then do the work of making the choice that we made right for our life, because we can just, I think I think about how it's easier sometimes, right, to think about hypothetical people that you could date rather than like dealing with the relationship in front of you. And sometimes our brain wants that escape hatch of, well, it will just be different if I get a different partner, if I change careers, if I do something different. And I'm not saying people can't or shouldn't change, but I think we also, it is more vulnerable to commit to something and then make it work than not commit sometimes and feel like, well, if I just found the right decision, everything would work.
Totally. And then it's this feeling of like the possibilities all still exist out there. Whereas when we decide, it's like we know we have to make the best of whatever we've chosen. So, okay.
And then if we're not fulfilled or whatever, it's on us. It's not just because we made, we can make a different decision.
Totally. Then we have to take accountability. So
yeah.
Oh, lots of stuff going on with this choice. Thank you, Amanda, again for weighing in on those questions. Those were good ones today.
Yeah.
I realized after reading the third one, I was like, they're fence sitters, right? But people are like, I didn't think I was going to have kids and I don't know if I want this, but, I think that's normal and good that we're questioning this decision and whichever path, right? We might be very certain for a long time that we do want kids. And then there's that sort of 11th hour, like, do I really want this? And so I think it's great to be thoughtful. It's good to want to explore this. And I think at a certain point, we've got to make the decision to make it right for ourselves.
Yep.
All right. So Amanda had to jump ship, and I'm going to be wrapping up today's episode on my own because we suddenly had a moment where we were like, oh my God, it's top of the hour. She had to go to a session. So thank you, Amanda, for coming on again. We were able to get our questions answered, hopefully to your satisfaction, dear writers and listeners. And again, if you have a question for us, dear former fence sitters, please make sure to email it or DM me so that we can answer it in a future episode of the Dear Former Fence Sitter series. Now, I had promised Amanda that I would share the story about this Substack post that she wrote. And in effect, what happened is I was out hiking one day a few months ago, and I had this idea for it. I don't have a Substack, so it's going to be an email or maybe a blog post or something that I would share on Instagram. And the insight was around the fact that having kids, without having had them, I could see parallels with hiking and specifically doing kind of long, arduous hikes. And I thought, there's a really brilliant parallel here because hiking is an activity that to people who maybe aren't big adventure seekers, outdoor lovers, fitness junkies, what have you, it seems a little bit senseless. I mean, you are effectively sweating and huffing and puffing your way up a mountain to have these kind of summit moments, if you will, right? Where you're at the top and you're having a relaxing lunch and it's beautiful weather or not. But it can seem a little bit thankless going hiking. And although I actually really enjoy that journey of hiking most of the time, I had this hike that I mentioned a few months ago where I was out. It was a solo hike. It was a hot day. And I thought, oh God, I just, why am I doing this? What is this about? And I kind of want this to be done. Anyways, fast forward to a few weeks ago when I opened my email and there's a letter from Amanda's Substack, Fence Sitter, which, by the way, highly recommend signing up for if you are on the fence. I think it's $5 a month. Amanda shares really thoughtful, wonderful posts and perspectives, specifically from someone who was a former fence sitter who has a child, as well as she has some guests on a podcast that she airs as part of Fence Sitter that you can only access through your Substack membership, or through subscribing to Fence Sitter. Anyways, I open my inbox and Amanda has written this email, and I don't remember what the subject line was, but I realized almost immediately Amanda wrote my article. This is the thing I've been wanting to commentate on and talk about. And I had to laugh. And this is a sidebar, and I'm wondering if Amanda will understand or know this reference, but there is a book called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert about creative living. It's called, subtitle, Creative Living Without Fear. And Elizabeth Gilbert shares an idea, which I guess has been shared amongst creatives, where essentially there's this sort of like spirit, if you will, this creative spirit that is the ideas. And I appreciate this is sort of a bit of a quirky idea perhaps for some of you, but basically the ideas live out there, right? In the ether, the atmosphere. I'm not sure where they are, and that they will essentially visit us as creatives. We're all creative, but if you're a writer, you're a painter, you're a script writer. And if the idea is not expressed or used, if you will, by that person, then it will find another outlet, this said creative spirit. And so quite literally, I feel like this exemplifies my idea, because I feel like this idea visited me and then it was like, well, you're not doing anything. Get to work. And then it visited Amanda. Amanda wrote the post that I could have written. And I'm so happy she did, because I know she did it far more justice than I could ever have hoped to. So Amanda, thank you for allowing the visitation of this creative spirit to come see you so that you could talk about having kids as being like type 1 or type 2 fun, that you could tell us about the hike you went on with your friend and how you two had this sort of epiphany moment. Listen, I'm sure we're not the only two people out there who've maybe drawn similar conclusions. And like Amanda said, we can like hiking, we can like type 2 fun and not necessarily want to have kids. But I do think if there is something that you enjoy doing, it may not be a physical or sort of adventure pursuit, but something that is generally kind of hard and that makes other people say, what the heck? Maybe you're said creative, maybe you enjoy your writer, you're writing a book, or perhaps there's some other endeavor that you've been pursuing and working on for a long time. It can often seem thankless. And we might ask ourselves, why the heck am I doing this? But there can be also incredible rewards and payoff and meaning. And I think that, again, Amanda articulates this so well in this piece she wrote for her Fence Sitter Substack about type 1 and type 2 fun and hiking. So That's my story. I couldn't believe it. When I opened my inbox, I was like, this is the post. And I wrote a little comment on the Substack piece saying, this is the post that I wanted to write and you wrote it. And again, in a gleeful, happy way, not like, damn it, Amanda, why did you steal my idea? Which of course she did no such thing. So friends, if you have an idea, either share it with the world or hope that somebody who can do it in an even more beautiful and articulate way manages to do so. All right. Thank you to Amanda for coming on today for this. Thank you to our 3 letter writers today. Again, if you want to submit a letter for another episode of Fence Sitter, or Dear Former Fence Sitter, I should say, then send me an email or drop me a DM. All right. Thanks for listening, and I wish you a beautiful rest of your day.
Okay, now that we've wrapped up today's conversation, this is the part of the episode where I tell you that you need to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. And you really need to do that. And I'm going to tell you why. And that is because one of the big ways that people find and discover new podcasts like this one is through reviews. So if you yourself can go say what you loved about this podcast, why people who are on the fence should tune into the Kids or Childfree podcast, that's going to help other people who are also wondering, should I have kids or stay child-free, to discover us. Thank you in advance for doing so. I will be featuring some of the reviews in upcoming episodes, so maybe I'll share yours. You never know. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you back here soon for our next episode.